In this session we want to talk about sales management. We start by posing the simple question, or perhaps even the complex question, what is sales management? Well, all activities, processes and decisions involved in managing the sales function in an organization, all of these really constitute sales management. These are all the activities, all the processes and all of the decisions that are involved in the sales function in an organization, and management is involved with all of those, and that's a straightforward definition taken from Johnson and Marshall. Sales management involves all activities concerned with effective selling and the sales operation or the sales department. So it's looking at effective selling. In other words, turning customers into buyers, or turning potential buyers into buyers. It's making the sale, and it's operating the department in a way that is conducive to making sales. Sales management is an important function as it determines sales levels. And of course, sales levels are sales revenue, and sales revenue is one side of the balance sheet. This is what, when we take away costs, results in profit. So sales are a vital component of the business activity. It's imperative that organizations make sales. This is what enables them to continue. This is what enables them to generate the profit, to pay the salaries, the wages, pay the overheads, pay all of the outgoings, as well as paying dividends to the shareholders, the people who took the risks in setting up the business in the first place. Effective management of sales helps the organization achieve their sales goals. So it's effective management. It's not random. The sales team must have a plan. They must have anticipated issues and situations. They must have anticipated questions from customers. They must be prepared for eventualities. And they must be configured in a way that enables them to turn, as I said earlier, potential buyers, potential customers, turn them into actual ones by making sales. The following are some functions of sales management. For a start, sales planning, which must be realistic. The sales planning within an organization must enable the organization to project what they see realistically as the amount of sales that will take place in a given time period. And that enables the organization in total to look at its likely profitability in that time period. But also there's sales reporting. In other words, capturing information and data, capturing the data, converting it to information, talking to the customers, getting feedback, and reporting back on the whole sales activity to see what can be learned and what can be improved for the future. Then there are sales staff recruitment and management. It's important to have the right sales staff, not just anybody, but sales staff who are more likely to make the sales. Sales staff who are trained within the sales or the sales department. They are trained within that sphere. They know what is right and what is wrong. They know what's effective and what's not effective. They know the product. They know how to deal with customers. They're well spoken. They're polite. They're efficient. And they're knowledgeable about the product, as I said. Then there's the sales structure. How do sales actually take place? Where do the sales take place? Is it convenient? Is it conducive to selling? Is it a friendly atmosphere, and is it done in a polite and orderly fashion? And how is it structured? How is the payment taken? And How do the customers feel when they're leaving, having made a purchase? Now let's talk about these in a little more detail and get slightly different angles on them. Let's start by sales planning. This involves formulating strategy and setting sales targets. It's important to have sales targets. If they don't have targets, then there's no motivation. There's nothing pushing the sales staff to try to achieve. So they must have targets which drives them to try and make the sales. Sales planning is important as it provides direction for the sales department. It indicates the direction in which the sales department should move, what they should do, how they should configure themselves, and how they should lay out the department, and who should do what. How should functions be allocated? It's important to have efficiency within the sales planning, within the sales department, I should say, and sales planning will enable this to take place, because it will look critically at the functions within the sales department. Sales managers are required to develop a sales plan document containing aims, strategic planning, environmental analysis, results, resources, and sales activities. So the sales managers must have sales plans, and they must contain all of these different components. They must be discussed, and they must be realistic. They should not be just contrived for the sake of it. They should be based on evidence, they should be based on actual performance, and they should be realistic. Sales planning allows the organization to respond rapidly to changing market conditions. When market conditions do change, then the sales plan can be updated. Market conditions could be that new products are brought onto the market, the products have been innovated or changed, or there is some issue about disposable incomes in the area. Perhaps a local employer has gone bankrupt and there's more unemployment in the area. Something which affects the sales in another company. So the sales planning team must be able to integrate this knowledge and adjust the sales plan so that the organization is able to continue. There should be research and identify target markets, assessment of demand for products and services, provide products at the right time, the right place to the end customer. So it's important that the sales planning team know who the target markets are and look at the attributes of those markets, look at the requirements of those markets, and try to match up their product with those requirements and try to satisfy customer needs. So having the product at the right time, in the right place, at the right price, with the right backup support. Sales reporting. This concerns key performance indicators for the sales force. Key performance indicators are what the management deemed to be realistic for the various departments and for the sales department, and then the performance of the sales department are measured against this key performance indicator. Sales reporting is important. It ensures strategies are implemented and followed through efficiently. So the sales strategies must be implemented and they must be followed through. It's important, otherwise the strategies are just aspirational points on a piece of paper or on a computer screen. They should be implemented and followed through. That's important. Reporting requires continuous monitoring, performance review, sales force management, and allows the organization to assess current and future potential. So it's important that the sales reporting is continuous. It's important that it doesn't just happen in one time period or for the sake of it. It reviews the sales performance, it looks at the sales force, it looks at the management of the sales force, it looks at the environment in which they operate, and it tries to assess their current and future potential to see what can be done to further improve or supplement what they're currently doing to try and get more sales. Recruitment and staff management. Well, sales management is responsible for the effective management of the sales force. That's almost a truism. It must be the sales management who are responsible for the sales force. The department must have measures in place to manage the sales force. For example, they must have something in place to motivate and reward the sales force. If they're being rewarded, if they've got incentives, then they will try harder. So what is the incentive? Do they get a percentage of the sales revenue generated? How is it that the sales force are motivated? But it's also important that the management are aware of employment legislation and health and safety issues and redundancy and pensions, and that these things are also looked after and looked after appropriately. Recruitment and selection procedures should also be clearly articulated and followed. Recruiting the right personnel and making sure that there is a balance within the workforce that reflects perhaps the local community, making sure that the local community don't feel intimidated by the sales staff, that the sales staff are drawn from their ranks, and that the local community, who are the customers perhaps, feel at ease with the sales force. And looking after employee welfare, as I said, equality and diversity. I mentioned earlier in the context of recruitment that the sales force should really be drawn from the local community where possible, so that the sales force reflects the local community. And whatever that local community is in terms of its different cultural influences within that society, whatever they are, that should somehow be reflected within the organization. And finally, performance management. It's important that the sales force, when in place, have got performance management explained to them. They have been given incentives perhaps to work and motivation schemes to enable them to apply themselves effectively to their tasks. But also they will be measured, their performances will be measured to ensure that they are acting in the interest of the business and doing their best to generate the sales that the business requires. Now, sales structures. Well, sales managers must apply appropriate sales structures which will enable the organization to achieve their sales targets. So sales managers must apply appropriate sales structures. It's important that depending on the nature of the business, that the sales department has a structure which facilitates their selling efforts. Now by that I mean that the sales department should be convenient within the store. It should be placed in so it's conspicuous and there's help and support for shoppers or for customers, and they can easily contact a member of staff for support and help and advice, and that is likely to be transferred into an actual sale more readily than if the department was in some obscure part of the building, and it was inconvenient for the customers, and the customers were left entirely through their own devices and had to try and guess or make the best judgment for themselves. So customers want advice if they request it, and the whole buying experience should not be an onerous one, it should be a pleasant one. Sales structures must be carefully assessed. There is a geographic structure for some businesses. They may operate on in a wide location across many different shops or outlets, and the structures may have to change according to their location. So, for example, if we were to buy a McDonald's burger in, let's say, in China, it may reflect the local food where that McDonald's outlet is located. Whereas if we buy a McDonald's burger in London, it'll reflect the type of style of life that is typical of London. So the sales structures must be carefully assessed and pitched according to where they're located. It could have a product customer based structure. It could be that the customers are graded according to some stratification, and the customers who fall into particular strata are then lined up with particular products and targeted as such. So it could be that customers of a certain income level will be targeted for certain products, and people with lower income levels will be targeted for other products, and so it could be done on that basis. It could be a matrix structure, which means that it's simply a question of looking at different customers and customer requirements, and looking at the customer's characteristics, and then trying to solve those in almost whatever way is possible. In other words, asking the customer what are their preferences, and don't have predetermined notions about what the customers want. Ask the customer, and if the customer asks for something which may be surprising given the socio-economic status of that particular customer, nonetheless that's the product that the customer wants. There are all sorts of issues associated with trying to work out sales structures to see which one is most efficient in terms of generating sales. It could be a functional structure. It could be based on what the company does, and in other words, the company has a production base, it has a distribution base, it has perhaps ancillary activities within the business, but it also has outlets. But it could also have perhaps few outlets, but instead tries to get other companies to sell on its product. So it doesn't have outlets itself. It supplies major high street, let's say, outlets. So it perhaps produces clothing, but it doesn't sell the clothing. It supplies Marks and Spencer's or some of the big retailers on the high street, and they do the selling. So when we look at sales structures, it's trying to find the right structure that will enable the business to generate the sales that it needs. Where it locates, the geographic one, the product and customer base structure, what is the product and what is the customer requirements, and trying to match those up. And instead of perhaps having set ideas about what the customers want in a certain area, just simply supplying a range of products and letting the customer choose. the matrix structure, just trying to find what works and doing it in a way that is efficient, but at the same time will give a greater range of opportunities for the customers to select a wider range of products, and perhaps also to get their hands on products which ordinarily they would not get within that particular area. So there's a whole range of sales structures that needs to be considered, and it is not necessarily a complex issue, but certainly there is no one solution, and yet the company must come up with a solution. It must come up with something that is going to apply, because they're going to have to open the doors to customers at some stage, and they just have to hope that what they have set out is what the customers want. Now, the impact of technology. Well, technology has played an important role in the sales management environment. We've seen all sorts of developments in sales. Now it's contactless selling, but at the point of sale there are all sorts of technologies have been used. In supermarkets, it's possible for the customer to check him or herself out, to check the goods and even pay for the goods, and the technology will detect what's in the bag. So technology has changed significantly in terms of sales. The use of technology allows the sales force or team to effectively collaborate despite geographic barriers. So technology is a good way of facilitating communications between the sales force team, and that is irrespective of geographic distance or barriers. So they have, for example, Skype. That's an obvious one, owned by Microsoft. It's on every PC just about, and is supplied free with Windows 10 and with various operating systems supplied by Microsoft. But there are other video conferencing applications that could be installed as well, which enables the sales force to collaborate and talk and exchange ideas and report what their experiences are. There are also tablet devices which are also quite popular. FaceTime, for example, on the Apple platform, which can be used on the iPhone or the iPad or any of those particular tablet devices. So there's a range of these conferencing applications that are useful, but also there's the possibility of online training courses that the company can keep the sales force up to date by simply providing online training courses. They don't have to take the employees away from their tasks for long periods of time for training purposes. They can do it online. So technology has become a very important tool in the management of the sales force. So those are some ideas about sales management, and it's worth going back over the video and just making a note of the various points and working out what the implications of different configurations, for example, the one we just mentioned, the impact of technology will have on sales, or on training, or on recruitment or sales management, or how the sales environment is set up, the exchange of ideas between sales departments in other areas, and communications between them. So there are many aspects to it that need to be considered. But that's all we're going to deal with here. That's one of the sources that's mentioned throughout, and one of the sources that was used in the preparation of this video. That's all we're going to deal with here, so let's leave it at that and say thank you for watching.